I am driving myself
Yeah.
and my husband crazy. And how do you know what your clutter threshold is? Like what is the test?
I hate to tell you this,
Uh-oh.
but there is literally no way to know other than to declutter. There's not a quiz that you can take. You can just know if my house feels overwhelming, I'm over my clutter threshold. If my house is consistently getting out of control and I feel bewildered by that, then I'm over my clutter threshold. So declutter, the only way to find your clutter threshold is to declutter. And
Oh my
then
God.
the maintenance for that is a 5-minute pickup. Okay. So this also, it does give you a gauge for, am I at my clutter threshold? It doesn't mean that everything is always going to be in its place. That is just not how I roll. I do not realize when something's leaving my hand. There's
Me either.
no awareness. Things just
Yeah.
randomly end up on surfaces. Okay.
Yes.
I could beat myself up, right? Like I could be like, oh, why am I this way? And it's not that I never still think those things, right? But that didn't help, right? Me saying, why do I do this? I've got to change. I've got to be a different person. That never helped. But what does help is for me to say, okay, I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to pick stuff up and put it away. If 5 minutes gets my space or my home, my goal is my whole home to be under control again from picking stuff up and putting it away about once a day ish, then I'm under my clutter threshold. Okay. So it's not that it stays perfect, it's that it stays manageable.
Okay. So can we get super tactical?
Sure.
Because the second you started to talk about clutter threshold, and I started imagining my version of organization, which for my entire life has been make it look pretty. Take all the shit that I have everywhere and arrange it to look nice. It's more like staging. I'm like staging shit, right? Everywhere. I immediately thought of my kitchen counters, which drive me fucking crazy because stuff accumulates there. And then I thought about the base of the stairs, both the stairs upstairs where everyone dumps things that need to get taken upstairs. And I thought about the stairs down to the garage, which is where we put cardboard boxes. Like I just have stacks of shit everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it drives me crazy. And so I bet as you're listening to Dana talk and you're nodding your head going, oh my God, this is me. And you can think about those places where that's a place where my clutter threshold is already through the roof. Walking into the mudroom, everything's everywhere. Kitchen counters, everything's everywhere. Base of the stairs, pile of stuff that somebody believes that there's like some magical fairy that lives in our house that picks it up and flies it up to the second floor and puts it in place. Where do you start? Like, take us to one spot, and can you walk us through the process of what decluttering actually means in that spot?
Yeah.
And how you do it.
Before we do that, let me just say, the less stuff you have, the less stuff that can pile, right? Like that was, anyway, I'll move on. So here, where I would start, I recommend what I call the visibility rule. I recommend that you go to the place that visitors to your home will see when they either come inside or are standing at the door and you're trying to keep them from coming inside, right? Because it's a mess, whatever. That is the place to start. And we're going to go through the decluttering process there. I'll explain that. But the reason why you want to start in a visible space is that you will see the progress that you're making. You will see your house getting better. The people who live with you will start to see your house getting better. You'll experience that it is easier to live in a space with less stuff. Okay.
Okay.
And so when you start there, because here's the thing, so many times when we get that desire to declutter, we go to the pantry, we go to the linen closet, we go to the top shelf of the master bedroom closet.
Yes.
We do those spaces because we think, okay, if I will work really hard on this, we really don't use this space that much. And so maybe it'll actually stay that way, right? When in reality, you can work really hard on that. You talked about all the color coding and blah, blah, blah in this random closet. And then at the end of the day, your husband, is like, so what'd you do today? And you're like, oh, I have been organizing all day. And I don't know about you. I'm not going to project this on you, but in my experience, I've had that exact scenario happen. And my husband would be like, really? Like, okay. Well, what is more defeating than that? Right? Like,
Yes.
it's to feel like I have been organizing all day and I'm still embarrassed to open my front door. But
Yes.
if you work on visible spaces first, then you see the progress that you're making and you inspire yourself to keep going because you're like, oh, wow, that looks good. I may not have noticed when it was messy, but I notice now when it looks great. And then that inspires me to keep going. Okay. Do you want me to talk about the actual process?
Yes.
Okay. I know. See, I have to have like real steps because I have to remind myself still. I still look at a space and go, and I'm like, nope, I have steps. Okay. All right. So the first step is trash. Grab a black trash bag or whatever you have available. Ideally, it's black just because then you can't see what you just put inside of it. Your family
Oh
can't
my
see what you're
God.
putting inside of it.
Can I
right?
just confess something?
Yes.
I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this. So Oakley, who is super creative, he's our 18-year-old son. His room is a profound disaster. I didn't get in an argument with him because I don't live in this room, so I don't really care. And I don't clean his room. You want to live like a sty, that's fine. I don't care. That's your space. But Chris was like, what the hell, dude? Like, we built all these drawers for you to throw, and they're even big drawers, so you don't have to fold things. Everything's on the floor. So Oakley cleaned his room Sunday, okay? And he put all kinds of clothes in a bag that no longer fit him so we could donate them. This morning, they were sitting in the mudroom, which has profoundly passed my clutter threshold, in a clear, whitish colored kitchen garbage bag. In the middle, I spotted a flannel shirt that I paid a lot of money for Christmas that he has outgrown. And I tore open the bag because I could see it, and I pulled it out of the bag just this morning.
It happens, right?
Yes, you know what I'm going to do with that? I'm going to hang it in my closet because I can wear it, but I don't even want it. What the fuck
That's
is
hilarious.
wrong with me, Dana?
Nothing's wrong with you. This is normal.
So is that why you have a black bag so you can't see the stuff that you're throwing out?
Yes, that's exactly why. Now, with that, if you're like, I don't have black trash bags, start with whatever. Start with a paper sack. It doesn't matter. Okay.
Okay.
But if you have a black trash bag, use that for exactly the reason that you're talking about. But I'm talking about trash, not necessarily donations at this point.
Okay.
Like when I start with trash, the reason I start with trash is it is literally the easiest of the easy stuff. I am not talking about deciding whether this item is trash. I'm talking about just saying, that's trash, put it in the bag. That's trash, put it in the bag. It starts the movement. Right?
Okay.
Like there are literally no decisions to be made, no emotions to be felt. It is just the action. And that immediately makes the space less overwhelming because there's less stuff in it than there was before.
Okay.
But it also helps my brain start to adjust to what's actually there. Because when I look at it as a big pile, it's like, it's a pile. The pile is overwhelming. There's important stuff in there, I'm sure. And so it feels like the whole pile is full of important decisions, difficult decisions to make. But as I'm looking for trash, I'm seeing what's actually there, which then helps me be ready to move into the next steps of the process. Okay.
So we start with trash and a black bag.
Yes.
And anything that is trash. Now, I know this is a technical question, but I am mentally in a mudroom.
Okay.
If you see a mitten and it doesn't have a pair, is that considered trash as part of this process? Or are we just talking papers and crap people have not thrown out and that kind of thing?
If you have to think about it,
yes,
skip it and we'll get to it in the next step.
I love you.
Okay.
And I love that you're breaking it down because I think this is like a real thing that we struggle with. Like I see a pile and you're right. I can become paralyzed because I think there might be something expensive or important in there. And so I don't know if I'm ready to sort through all that stuff. I just don't want to see the pile because I want it to be pretty. But you're saying trash, black bag, go. What's the next step?
And the mindset there too that you're saying is, I just want it to be pretty. Change your mindset to, I'm going to make this space better. That means I can literally throw away 2 pieces of trash, 1 piece of trash, get distracted, step away because I'm just don't want to do this right now. And I've still made it better, which means I have been successful. Like if I do anything, I have achieved better. Okay. So, all right. Sorry. That was a little preachy break there.
No, I think it's perfect because your point about us attacking this like a project that then spills out of control is part of the problem.
Yes.
And really leaning into this concept of decluttering as an ongoing way of life and removing things that you have to manage is genius. Because I don't feel successful in this area.
But you are successful with every piece of trash. It is better because my goal is better. My goal is to have less in the space. If you have less in the space than you did when you started, you have successfully decluttered. You're not done, but you have successfully decluttered. It's just stuff leaving your house, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's move to step 2. Step 2 is the easy stuff. So trash was the easiest of the easy stuff because it's just going straight into the trash bag or the recycling bin. If you have one available and accessible and established, bring it with you along with that trash bag. Okay.
Okay.
But the second step is the easy step. Easy stuff I define as anything that already has an established home. It's just not there for whatever reason. Like I'm not going to agonize over why is this in the mudroom? It's just, this goes into its already established home in the kitchen or whatever. I'm going to take those things to their already established homes immediately. I can take as many as my hands will hold, but I can't take any more than that. Like I'm not going to put them in a box. I'm not going to set them aside and do it later. I'm going to go everything that comes into my hand that I pick up that I identified as easy, having an established home, no decision to make, no emotions to be felt. I am just going to go ahead and I'm going to take it there now. Okay. So again, I am making the space better. I can step away at any time because I'm making progress and only progress. Right.
Got it.
Then the third step is donations. Okay. This can happen at any point in the process. It just gives me an excuse to stick stuff in my donate box immediately without asking any decluttering questions, because there are things that obviously need to be put in there. But when you are someone who feels, who hasn't felt successful at decluttering before, it feels like all decluttering decisions are going to be difficult. So we want to narrow down the ones that you really have to make decisions about and go ahead and just stick stuff in the donate box. The key with the donate box, like the black trash bag, is that the box itself needs to be donatable. So don't stencil the word donate on the outside of a cute wooden box. Like that's not what we're doing, right?
Because that's organization.
Well, yeah.
Right.
And 2, it just sets myself up to have to go back through that box again, right? Like, and then I'm going to second guess myself. And if I know that I'm going to go through it again, then I might put things in there that I haven't actually made a real decision about, right? Because I'm like, future me is going to have it all together. You know, that's what I always thought. Someday I'm going to be organized. How could I not be, right? So I'm going to put this in this box because I'll know what to do with it later. And instead, I'm just putting off decisions. And then I know that that box actually has decisions to be made. So then I put off dealing with that. And that's, you know, that's what people on, I'm not on TikTok, but I hear from a lot of people who call them doom boxes. And they're like, oh, doom boxes, your process works for doom boxes. And I'm like, I think it's didn't organize, only moved is what it stands for. But just the word doom, I was like, oh, I know what that is. Yeah. I had a lot of those over the years. Right?
Well, I'm glad that you got very granular, because the second you said a donate box, I immediately imagined a plastic or a cardboard box. And I immediately imagined me taking a Sharpie and writing the word donate on a piece of paper and taping it to the side. And then I would fill it up and then like have more questions about what's in that box. So you're basically just saying, no, have a box that's already going to get donated to, some bin that you can also drop off or basket.
Or
and you
Amazon
just,
boxes,
or
whatever. Yeah.
Amazon boxes.
Mhm.
Do not write the word donate. Just know that this is going.
Do write the word donate so that you remember that was a donate box.
Okay, so write the
But
word donate.
right, but don't decorate it. Don't make it something you're going to want to reuse.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, when you do this, do you recommend that you just take that box in this session and just put it in the back of your car because you're done with this decluttering moment? Or do we leave it somewhere?
It's really up to you. It depends on how full it is. Uh, the the decision making is over once the thing is in the box. The action of taking it somewhere to be donated or making the phone call to have a pickup scheduled or whatever, that is a valid use of your decluttering time. But I don't want you to not declutter because you're not going to be able to go drop it off today. Okay.
Got
So,
it.
like,
Okay.
I will often have some donate. My husband would hear this and go, "You always have." I always have a donate box or two or three in a spot in our garage that is ready to be taken wherever it needs to go. The decision making, though, is where the real power is. And those things are just ready to know that, oh, we're going to such and such place. There's a donation drop off near there. Let's load them up and take them.
Great. Got it. What
Yeah.
comes after donate?
Okay. So at this point, we have removed trash, easy stuff, and obvious donations, right? So we are down to things that at first glance, you're like, either yes, they go here, or I have no idea on this item what to do. Okay. So this is where my 2 decluttering questions come in. And I had seen, when I started this, I had seen lists, beautifully written lists of all kinds of questions to ask yourself about items and whether you want to donate it or keep it. I had too much stuff in my house to ask myself 10 questions about everything, and
Yes.
besides, those questions generally let my brain spin out, right? Like, do I love it? Well, yeah, I love all this stuff, like, why would I have it in my house if I didn't love it? Right.
Right.
So I couldn't ask myself those kinds of questions. So I came up with 2 questions. And if I can answer the first one, I don't even have to ask the second one. So the first question is, if I needed this item, where would I look for it first? Okay. It's really important that you ask exactly that question. Where would I look for it first? Does not allow for analysis. It is an instinct question. Okay. The word would is the key word. That means, because this item was not easy, it doesn't have an established home in my house. Okay. But I pick it up and I say, okay, I've got these I'm going to have a prop here. I decided not to wear these, anyway. But if I needed my headphones, where would I look for them first? It is literally the first drawer or cabinet that I would open, even if I had no confidence they would be there. It is because it needs a home, right? Like a place for everything and everything in its place that organized people say and think is so obvious. I was always like, what are y'all talking about? Like, I don't have places for things. Like, what? Like, it just didn't make any sense in my brain. And so I had to come up with a place for things. And this is how I do that. Where would I look for it first? Because here's the thing. The beauty of putting something in the place where you would look for it first is that when you look for it, you find it in the first place where you would look for it. And you find it in the first place where you look for it. Isn't that the goal that you've had all along, wanting to be organized?
It's so true. And well, no, what I'm realizing my goal is that I just want shit to look pretty. I've never even thought about like organization as a way to make my life easier. And it's a genius question because I've put things in cabinets and drawers because I didn't know where else to put it.
Yes. This is how you establish the home. You do not, what I used to do was think about where my grandma kept hers.
Yeah.
And think, okay, well, her house was always great. So I should put mine in the place, or call my best friend who's way more organized than me and say, hey, where do you keep your whatever it is?
Yeah.
But how many people say as a joke, or there's a Facebook meme or something that says, I got organized and now I can't find anything.
Yes.
right? Like this doesn't allow for that to happen. I am putting it in the plate, and it's hard in the beginning because you don't trust yourself, right? You're like, but what is the first place that pops in your mind where you would frantically look if you needed this item and had no idea where it was? Where's the first place where you would look? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this also is part of that accepting how I actually function as opposed to how organized people function. And I wish I was like them.
Yeah.
And instead saying, okay, fingernail clippers were the thing when I came up with this question, as I was like, everybody else in the whole wide world surely would put their fingernail clippers in the bathroom drawer because that's where they're supposed to go, right? But in my family, whenever somebody is looking for fingernail clippers, they look in this junk drawer that's like on the edge of the kitchen. That is just our reality. And I said, you know what? I would rather have things be in the first place where we look than try to be like other people and never be able to find anything in my house.
That's amazing.
So
that's amazing. See, I don't know where to put nail clippers, so I just look in Chris's top drawer of the bathroom.
Well, if that's where you look for it first, then that's great. Like, that's great. If that's where you look first, that's where they should be.
Got it.
It really doesn't, there is not a perfect place for things. There's the place where you would look first in your house. That's what matters. But then there's the second part of the question, which is not actually a question, but is actually the key to my no mess, progress, and only progress decluttering process. Okay.
Okay.
And that is when you answer that question, where would I look for this first? Take it there now. People get all worked up over this. Like they are like, no, but that's can't be the most efficient way. And yet in the end, it is. So here's the deal. I used to, because I'm kind of obsessed with efficiency, which would never show with the way my house used to look, right? But I would make all these piles. I would be like, okay, this is the stuff that goes to the kids' room. This goes to the garage.
Yes.
This goes to the bathroom.
Yes.
And when I'm done,
yes,
I will go deliver all these things through the house. And that makes so much more sense than taking it there right now.
Yes.
But that's how things work in an ideal world where I don't get distracted in the midst of a project. I don't stop halfway through. Nobody starts bleeding, right? Like that's the ideal world. I don't live in an ideal world. Okay. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and take it there right now. No piles, because before I would step away for an hour or 3 weeks or whatever. And those neat little piles where I had totally made all these decisions, those neat little piles now morph into one big pile outside the space that I was initially decluttering. So my house looks worse than it did before.
Yes.
That's the whole make a bigger mess whenever you try to declutter.
Oh my gosh.
And so I said, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take it there right now. And then when I do that, I can stop. I'm accepting the fact that I will get distracted or life will happen. I can stop at some point and this space is only better. It is never worse. I have never created a bigger mess. I'm taking one item at a time, making a final decision on it, and I'm acting on that final decision. So it's either gone in the trash bag, it's gone to its already established home, it has gone in the donate box, or I have established a home by asking myself, where would I look for this first? And then I take it there now. Okay. So that's the key to all of this. And people will resist it.
Wow.
And then I'll say, just try it. And then they will try it. And then they will email me and say, I cannot believe the difference. I cannot believe I have actually made real progress decluttering for the first time in my life. It's working. Like it's changing my house because of that. Go ahead and take it there right now. But people don't like it, but it's still, it works.
I think it's genius because, you know, I completely related to moving and sorting and organizing things into piles and then running out of energy or time or getting distracted and not actually taking those piles anywhere.
Well, and then
you're right. And it makes it worse.
Yes. You come back to the space and you have to make all those decisions again. Right?
Oh my God. I feel like I do this every weekend.
Yeah.
that every weekend it is me on that hamster wheel of making piles and running things around and pulling
Yes.
apart stuff. And holy smokes, this is revolutionary.
Yeah.
What do you do about finding things that, like, how do you determine if you're keeping it? Because I feel like I get very paralyzed when I have an item and I've spent a lot of money for it, or somebody's given it to me, or I might need it some point 10 years from now. At what point do you actually take it to the junkyard? Like, what's the difference between I'm throwing this out versus I'm donating?
So all of those questions that you have in your mind, or that you just stated, those are the natural questions that people think they need to ask when they're decluttering. I don't ask those questions. I stick to the facts. Okay. And so my process leads me through and helps me make those decisions, but without all of the emotions, because I brought all this stuff into my house because I saw the value in it. Right. And so before, when I would declutter, I would make value decision after value decision, which is exhausting. Right.
Yes.
And then it's so emotionally exhausting. And I know it is, that then I would put off decluttering because I was like, I don't have it in me to make those kind of decisions today. Right. Like, so instead I say, okay, if I needed this item, where would I look for it first? And then I take it there now. And then I look at that space. And sometimes this is a common question people have, is like, what do I do when that space is its own big decluttered mess? All I'm going to do is I'm going to not leave that space any worse. And I'm going to say, what am I willing to get rid of from this messy space where I would look for this item first?
Mm-hmm.
What am I willing to get rid of from here that will create the space that I need for this item that I answered I would look for it first here? Okay. So it might be trash. Ideally, it's going to be trash or dead donations, because then my trash bag and my donate box are back at the space I was initially decluttering, and that'll take me back there. Right.
Right.
But so I'm just going to say, what in here is trash? Because it needs to be decluttered, right? Like I just said, it's a total mess. There's no room for this. So it's going to be decluttered, but I'm not doing that right now. I'm sticking with this initial space. And so I'm like, what in here am I willing to get rid of in order to make room for this? And so it helps me, instead of saying, does this thing have value? I say, is there a space for it? Which is a very, what's the word? It's leaving my brain right now, but it's a very,
I don't know. I'm hanging
fact-based.
on every single word. Well, what do you do if you have like a basement or garage? There's like space in there. Can I just give you an example?
Sure.
I'm starting to realize how nuts I am about this stuff.
You are not nuts.
No, but I literally am realizing and I don't know if you listening to us are feeling the same sort of energy drain, but I'm realizing how much noise and just how much drama I add to the process of what I thought was organizing. And so I'll give you an example. So I've talked about how our son, Oakley, who is very creative, who will love this process, who spent half of his Sunday organizing his room to make his dad happy. And then he did the big thing of clothes. I've admitted that I ripped through it and pulled 2 things out. I don't know where I'm going to put that stuff, because I guess it would go in I don't even know why I kept it. I kept it because it was something that I bought him for Christmas that was rather expensive. And then there's a jacket that's like a fall jacket that, because I bought it for him when he was 15, he literally wore it for about a minute before he grew out of it. And it was expensive. And so I see this jacket, I grab it. I'm like, okay, we live in Vermont. People visit. Should I hold on to this in case somebody visits and they didn't pack a jacket? Maybe this would fit me and it would fit this. And then I literally attach all this meaning, and I create these stories about why I need to keep the thing and the value of the thing. And if I ask myself, if I needed this item, where would I look for it? I'm even stalled because I go, well, I don't really need it in the mudroom. Maybe I should create a place in the basement for extra clothes for guests who forgot clothes that you need when you visit Vermont. What the fuck is going on? Like, I donate, duh.
Well, okay.
Is this
what
normal?
you just described? Yes. What you just described is your brain spinning out. Okay.
Yes.
And a lot of people who are naturally organized and who see this and go, I mean, I'll just be honest. How many times in your life, how many times in my life have I had somebody go, why are you thinking that way? That is exactly how my brain worked, which is the reason I just had somebody recently say to me, I can follow your process because I know you know all of my reasons why I want to keep this, and still have a process that works. Like when I'm talking to someone who's like, those are dumb reasons, like everything you said made sense to me. I get it. Right. And yet when I thought that way, my house was a disaster and I was frustrated with it. And I had all those feelings of what is wrong with me. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I hate to just be like, let's go back to the process, except that
No, let's go back to the process.
Is what talks you through all of this. Okay. So the second decluttering question that I only ask myself, if my first response to where would I look for this first, whether it's about the jacket, whether it's about a stapler, whatever, if I look at the item and I'm like, where would I look for this first? And my answer is, okay. Then I ask myself the question, if I needed this item, would it ever occur to me that I already had one? Okay. I can think about this being in your scenario that you were talking about with but we're not going to bring the scenario into it. We're just going to ask the fact-based question. If I needed this jacket, would it occur to me that we already had one? And it's tough because you're holding it in your hand, right? Like it's there, it's in front of you. And then how many of us are like, well, I just decluttered something and then I ended up needing it. But I had to make progress in my home. I had to get stuff out of my house, right? So I had to make these hard calls and say, I'm going to be honest. If I needed this, would it occur to me that I already had one? Because I didn't have a place where I would look for it first, which means I would not have even gone looking for it. Instead, I would have done without, we would have said, hey, here's 6 sweatshirts, kid who forgot your coat, right? Or, hey, let's run by the store and grab one, or whatever. But those are both valid options. But the thing is, if I didn't get rid of this item, and I wouldn't have looked for it if I needed it, it's just sitting in my house and I'm adding more to it as I go and grab what I need because it doesn't occur to me that I already have one.
Yeah.
Okay. So that right there is me saying, this is my reality check. I'm going to stick it in the donate box. If I insist that I would know that I had it, then I have to go back to that first question and say, where would I actually look for this first? Not that I think it's going to be there, but literally, if I know for sure that I have this, then there has to be a first place where I would look, right? And I need to be honest with myself about that too.
Wow. This is fascinating because it is a whole new way to think about this. Because again, just to come back to this example, it wasn't even like I saw it in the mudroom. I came out of my bedroom. And I don't know if anybody else's family members do this, but somehow our staircase upstairs is the garbage and laundry chute where people just chuck things over the banister and they land up like at the bottom of the stairs. And so there was the donate trash bag with the flannel shirts that I ripped out. And then laying a couple stairs above was this jacket that no longer fits him. And you can do this process is what I'm realizing in that moment, because I think that's also the reality. The reality of the decluttering process, if I'm tracking, is not that you go, okay, this Sunday, I'm doing this in the mudroom. It's that you walk out of your bedroom and you're like, what the fuck? Okay, he's thrown all this stuff down. It's 7:15 in the morning. There's now a giant mess in front of me at the base of the stairs. And you're saying you can do this process right now. I see the jacket. It doesn't belong there. I have a choice in that moment to say, if I needed this item, where would I look for this first? And if it's not immediate, and if the answer is the mudroom, I walk to the mudroom and hang it up.
Yeah.
If the answer is, ooh, it doesn't fit him anymore, and do we even need to keep it? And I go to the second question, which is what was the second question?
If I needed this item, would it ever occur to me that I already had one?
if I needed this item, would it occur to me that I already had one? And the answer is yes, because I have the exact same size in a jacket for me. I buy the same company. So yes, I have one.
Would it occur to you that you had the second one? That you had your son's jacket? Because if it would, then it's fine to go take it with the place where you would look for it first, because we're also going to address the reality of that space as we get into the last step of the process. But
got it. So let's just say, let's indulge my psychoness, okay? Because I think we all have that. If you're a creative mind, you're also thinking, someday, 15 years from now, there might be a scenario where I wish I had this, right?
Yes.
So let's just say I go, okay, where am I going to look for this first? And I make a snap decision. This goes in my guest closet, right? And I have a little rack in the basement.
No. You didn't make a decision. You asked yourself a question that revealed your instinct of where you would look for it first. Sorry, I just had to.
No. Great. If I needed this item, where would I look for it first? And my instinct would be, it would be in the basement, in a little area I've created for extra stuff in case somebody needs to borrow something.
Okay.
Which I don't know why I need this, but I had it. So I would then go downstairs to the basement to this place that has not been created yet, and I would put the jacket there.
Yeah. If that's the place where you would look for it first, then you put it there. But if there is no thing there, like there's no place for it, but there's a pile of other stuff, okay, I'm not going to leave that any worse. So what am I willing to get rid of in order to make room for this jacket? Which means something is leaving your house, right? So you are decluttering, but often it will help you realize, oh, wait, there's not actually a good place for this here. Or wait, I'm not willing to get rid of any of this stuff in order for this jacket to stay. And it will help you realize, oh, I can just donate this item.
This thing. Yeah, that's what I'm getting through all of this. Like I'm realizing this process helps you deal with yourself.
Yes. But if you don't take it there now, you're living in this land of hypotheses.
I'm still thinking about the damn jacket.
Yeah.
Right now.
You're like, oh, I'm going to put it down there. Yeah. I'll make a space down there.
Yes.
But you're not dealing with the reality of that actual space. You're not dealing with the reality of, oh, wow, I cannot stand going in this basement and I don't know. I live in Texas. We don't have basements. I'm very jealous of people with basements, but I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, if I take it down to this spot and then I realize this spot is full of spiders and all this stuff, and I don't want to leave a jacket down here. You know what I mean? But when I go there, it forces me into that reality. So much of what I do, probably 100%, honestly, of what I do is just a process that helps me accept reality about myself, reality about my stuff, reality about my space, all that.
I love this. What is the final step in this process?
Okay. So let's say, and this is going to apply to any space, all those spaces where you're taking things, but we're talking about the space that you are working on. Okay.
Okay. The mudroom.
At this point, you have removed trash, easy stuff, which belongs somewhere else. You've removed donations, and you are down because you've gone through the 2 decluttering questions. You are down to things that you would look for in this space, right?
Okay.
Like that's the only stuff that's in here is stuff that you would look for. But if the drawer still won't close, that's not working, right? Okay. Yeah. Like if it's still spilling outside of itself, then that's not going to work. So this last step is implementing what I call the container concept, which is something that when I had this realization about containers, it was something that if I was not writing about it as I was doing it, I would have probably been embarrassed to share it with a random person. But because I was just like, I'm just writing about what I'm figuring out. I wasn't trying to teach anybody anything at that point. And everybody went, oh, what? Like this changes everything. I was like, oh, okay. So it's not just me that this is valuable for. So here's the container concept. I used to think that containers were for putting things in, right? Organized people love containers. They buy containers. Their house looks great. I must need more containers. And so I would bring containers into my house. So here's my little scenario that I give. Let's say my friend whose kids were the same age as mine, you know, her little craft area looked amazing. Mine was this huge pile disaster spilling out of the cabinet. Okay. And I would look and say, oh, she has her crayons in a red bucket.
Yes.
That's the difference between her and me, right?
Yes.
Like she has a red bucket. I don't have a red bucket. That's why my space is a disaster. So I would go and buy a red bucket and I would dump crayons in there and I would realize, oh, I've still got 700 crayons left over. Why does this not work for me the way it works for her? So I would go out and buy 2 more red buckets. And then I would put the rest of my crayons in those red buckets. I'd go to put the red buckets on the shelf and my shelf wouldn't fit 3 red buckets. And I would think, are you kidding me? Why is this so hard for me? Like, why does this not work for me? And then eventually I would be like, well, obviously I need more shelves. So I'd buy more shelves. And then at some point I would think, well, I don't have any room for more shelves. Obviously I need a new house. And we can't afford a new house right now. So I am doomed to be disorganized. That is just how my brain worked. I just thought that if I, ran out of space in a container, I bought another container. And in reality, her house was smaller than mine. But in my mind, my issue was that my house was too small, right?
Okay.
Like, which doesn't make sense, but it made total sense to my brain before.
Yep.
Right. So when I was working, I was talking to myself because that's what I do. With how I've been able to build what I've built, but I was talking and I was saying container and I went, container, contain, like the word contain is in there. Serve as a limit, set a boundary, like firefighters contain a fire, they create a boundary. And as long as the fire stays inside the boundary, they can keep it under control. But if it goes outside the boundary, bad things happen, right? So like their whole goal is to keep it within this boundary. And I realized, oh, a container is not for putting things in. A container is meant to serve as a limit, to serve as a boundary. And that changed everything for me because I was able to say, okay, here's the red bucket. It's not going to fit everything, but it's the boundary. So I'm going to put my favorite crayons in first. And when it's full, something happens in my brain and I realize, oh, maybe I don't need 1,000 crayons. Oh, okay. And I haven't had to make value decisions. Remember, we were talking about this thing, but what about when I might use it? And what about, and it was expensive and blah, blah, blah. Before I would pick up every single crayon. I mean, this is all hypothetical, right? But not really. But I would pick up every crayon and be like, well, I mean, I know it's broken, but broken crayons still color, right?
Oh, yes, that's right.
Right. I mean, there's Facebook memes about that, right?
Oh, my God.
So I would make all these, and it took forever for me to analyze every single one. And instead, it's just, I'm going to put my favorite ones in first, and I'm going to let the container make the hard decision for me.
Wow.
And then when I go to put the red bucket on the shelf, I have to acknowledge that the shelf is also a container. The shelf is a limit, and it determines how many red buckets I can have. And the size of the room determines how many shelves I can have. And the size of my house is the size of my house. Remember, it's that reality acceptance, right? So I'm like, the size of my house is the size of my house. And if I'm going to put my favorite things in first, and I'm going to realize my house is a container, my house is a limit, what's my favorite thing in my house? It's the people who live in it, right? So like we deserve space first, which means I can't just keep putting in more shelves that make it hard for me to move around and make it hard for me to get to where I need to get. And so that just shifted everything. And I said, does it have space in the container? It actually doesn't matter how valuable something is, how much sentimental, feelings I have toward it. It's, does it have space? I can keep anything, but I can't keep everything and my house ever have a chance of being under control. Okay.
Wow.
So that's the container concept, which changes how you look at your house and how you look at your stuff and lets me let go of things because I'm like, it's not me. I see the value. It's the container.
Wow.
I don't have the space for it. And that is very freeing.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to commit right now to letting go of making myself wrong. Good job, Mel Robbins, for getting out there. Good job for trying out an episode where I would be walking and talking and recording it on my iPhone. And good job for having the presence of mind to realize it would be a better listening experience for you and a better experience for me to unpack this really important topic of letting go. How do you let go of what no longer serves you? I got to say, I get questions about this all the time. In fact, just yesterday, I got this question from Cheryl. Mel, how do you know that the thing you're holding on to is meant to be let go of versus fighting for it even harder? Do you have any thoughts or perhaps tools to help discover it or encourage the universe to bring that epiphany along? In other words, how do I know when it's time to let go? All right, everybody, get ready, because this is one of the most important aspects of creating a better life and of being a happier person. We spend so much time focusing on what we need to do, what we need to add in, what we need to change. And have you stopped to consider that the best place to make a change is by letting go of things, of projects, of thinking patterns, of relationships that no longer serve you? And the big question is how? How do you know when it's time? And I have got not only a fantastic visual metaphor to help you understand this concept, but I also have a really interesting way to approach this. We're going to talk about the fact that your energy and your intuition is always there to tell you when it's time to let something go because it no longer serves you. So, to get into this topic, I want to introduce the metaphor. And it was the metaphor I had started talking about as we were on that hike together. I mean, here in the United States, anyways, it is autumn. It is the fall season. We are all about pumpkins. We are in harvest time. There are corn stalks everywhere. We're getting ready for orange and red and all those amazing colors and carrot cake. I mean, I love this time of year. And I realize it may not be fall where you are. If you're, part of our global fan base halfway around the world, it's summertime. Don't get hung up on the fact that I'm using fall as a metaphor. I personally believe whenever it is that you are listening to this episode, even if it's 2 years from now, you're listening to this right now because you are meant to hear it right now. Because there is a new season that needs to start in your life, and that's going to require you to let go of things that no longer serve you. And so let's talk about the metaphor of what happens to a tree when the fall season hits. And in researching this for you, because, it's one thing to just kind of tell you a metaphor. It's another thing to really understand it and explain it. This was fascinating. I know we learned about chlorophyll and fall and the life cycle of a tree in elementary school, but I had forgotten most of this stuff. So check this out. The reason why a tree has leaves is because the tree needs energy to survive. It needs energy to grow. And the leaves have a very particular purpose. The leaves are there to take the sunlight and convert it to energy so that the tree can grow. And in exchange, the tree gives a ton of water back to these leaves. I mean, this process of the leaves sprouting and the leaves growing and the leaves taking its surface area and converting the sun into energy so the tree can go from a tiny little acorn to a mighty oak, that is a lot of energy. And there's this reciprocal nature to the relationship that a tree has to its leaves, because the tree has to bring in tons of water in order to fuel this energy exchange. And here's the reason why leaves fall off a tree. In the middle of winter, at least here in the United States, when the ground is frozen and snowpack is on top, there is no water for the tree. And if those leaves with their big flat surface were to stay on that tree through winter, the leaves would kill the tree. It would suck the tree dry of all the water that it needs. An interesting thing about fall is that, we look at the leaves turning and we look at the leaves dropping gently and falling down to the ground as this beautiful thing that happens. This natural thing that happens. It's so lovely. It's just wonderful. Isn't this delightful? Do you want to know that this is almost like a violent act? That the trees are pushing those leaves off its branches. The tree is basically going, yo, if you are hanging around on my branches through the wintertime, you are going to suck me dry of all my energy. I am going to die if you don't get off my freaking branches. The tree literally pushes them, ejects them, kicks them out of their life. Why? Because there is no reciprocal energy exchange that can happen during the winter. The tree has to conserve its energy to survive. And after the winter season, once those leaves are gone and the tree can conserve its energy instead of giving it all to that leaf while killing itself. I bet you got areas of your life where you're giving all your energy into a relationship or into your work or into some stupid thinking pattern that you've been doing for years that makes you feel bad. You put all your energy in one direction. You get nothing in return. That's what fall is for a tree. The fall season for a tree is, thank you very much for spring and summer. You were amazing. This relationship between the leaf and the tree, this was reciprocal. You got energy from me. I got energy from you. Bada bing, bada boom. And then all of a sudden, boom. This is a one-way thing. And if I hold on to these leaves, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And I'm bringing that metaphor and that visual and that documented point of view that this isn't just some lovely thing where the leaves, change colors and it's so beautiful and now we all drink a pumpkin spice latte. That's not what this is. This is a tree's survival. This is about energy. This is about the fact that in order to grow, in order to be strong, to be the best you got to surround yourself with relationships and work and projects and friendships and habits where there is an equal reciprocal exchange that you give and you get in return. And that's where we're going to start when it comes to how I want you to think about this concept of letting go. We're going to talk about how to identify that moment when there is no longer that energy exchange, that there is something that has become a complete energy suck. And when you realize, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship or a job or some habit or a place that you live, when you realize that something has become an energy suck on you, that's when you know it's time to let go. That's when you know, like that tree, that you better kick that thing off your branches because it's hanging on to you or you're holding on to it. And if you keep doing that, what will happen? And you've had this happen in your life where you've held on to things for too long, where you refuse to let things go. And what did it do? It sucked you dry. It sucked you dry of your energy. It sucked you dry of your vitality. It made you feel depleted. Instead of those leaves or that project or that person withering away and falling to the ground so that you could regain your strength, so that you could step into a new season of your life, no, you gave it all to them. You held on for too long. Well, guess what? That's not happening anymore. Because what we're going to talk about when we come back from a short word from our sponsors, which I want you to listen to, because by the way, our sponsors, they're the reason why I can show up twice a week. There is a reciprocal exchange between us. They literally pay for this show, which is why I'm so enthusiastic about it, so we can put this out there around the world for free. So I want to give an energy exchange back to the amazing sponsors of the Mel Robbins podcast. Take a listen. We're going to be right back, because we're going to now talk about in detail, what do I mean by reciprocal energy exchange? And where are the major areas in your life where you tend to start to have this be a one-way thing, where you're given all the energy and you're the one that's depleted and dry? Have you stopped to consider that the best place to make a change is by letting go of things, of projects, of thinking patterns, of relationships that no longer serve you? And the big question is how? How do you know when it's time? And I have got not only a fantastic visual metaphor to help you understand this concept, but I also have a really interesting way to approach this. We're going to talk about the fact that your energy and your intuition is always there to tell you when it's time to let something go because it no longer serves you. So, to get into this topic, I want to introduce the metaphor. And it was the metaphor I had started talking about as we were on that hike together. I mean, here in the United States, anyways, it is autumn. It is the fall season. We are all about pumpkins. We are in harvest time. There are corn stalks everywhere. We're getting ready for orange and red and all those amazing colors and carrot cake. I mean, I love this time of year. And I realize it may not be fall where you are. If you're, part of our global fan base halfway around the world, it's summertime. Don't get hung up on the fact that I'm using fall as a metaphor. I personally believe whenever it is that you are listening to this episode, even if it's 2 years from now, you're listening to this right now because you are meant to hear it right now. Because there is a new season that needs to start in your life, and that's going to require you to let go of things that no longer serve you. And so let's talk about the metaphor of what happens to a tree when the fall season hits. And in researching this for you, because, it's one thing to just kind of tell you a metaphor. It's another thing to really understand it and explain it. This was fascinating. I know we learned about chlorophyll and fall and the life cycle of a tree in elementary school, but I had forgotten most of this stuff. So check this out. The reason why a tree has leaves is because the tree needs energy to survive. It needs energy to grow. And the leaves have a very particular purpose. The leaves are there to take the sunlight and convert it to energy so that the tree can grow. And in exchange, the tree gives a ton of water back to these leaves. I mean, this process of the leaves sprouting and the leaves growing and the leaves taking its surface area and converting the sun into energy so the tree can go from a tiny little acorn to a mighty oak, that is a lot of energy. And there's this reciprocal nature to the relationship that a tree has to its leaves, because the tree has to bring in tons of water in order to fuel this energy exchange. And here's the reason why leaves fall off a tree. In the middle of winter, at least here in the United States, when the ground is frozen and snowpack is on top, there is no water for the tree. And if those leaves with their big flat surface were to stay on that tree through winter, the leaves would kill the tree. It would suck the tree dry of all the water that it needs. An interesting thing about fall is that, we look at the leaves turning, and we look at the leaves dropping gently and falling down to the ground as this beautiful thing that happens. This natural thing that happens. It's so lovely. It's just wonderful. Isn't this delightful? Do you want to know that this is almost like a violent act? That the trees are pushing those leaves off its branches. The tree is basically going, yo, if you are hanging around on my branches through the wintertime, you are going to suck me dry of all my energy. I am going to die if you don't get off my freaking branches. The tree literally pushes them, ejects them, kicks them out of their life. Why? Because there is no reciprocal energy exchange that can happen during the winter. The tree has to conserve its energy to survive. And after the winter season, once those leaves are gone and the tree can conserve its energy instead of giving it all to that leaf while killing itself. I bet you got areas of your life where you're giving all your energy into a relationship or into your work or into some stupid thinking pattern that you've been doing for years that makes you feel bad. You put all your energy in one direction. You get nothing in return. That's what fall is for a tree. The fall season for a tree is Thank you very much for spring and summer. You were amazing. This relationship between the leaf and the tree, this was reciprocal. You got energy from me. I got energy from you. Bada bing, bada boom. And then all of a sudden, boom. This is a one-way thing. And if I hold on to these leaves, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And I'm bringing that metaphor and that visual and that documented point of view that this isn't just some lovely thing where the leaves, change colors and it's so beautiful and now we all drink a pumpkin spice latte. That's not what this is. This is a tree's survival. This is about energy. This is about the fact that in order to grow, in order to be strong, to be the best you got to surround yourself with relationships and work and projects and friendships and habits where there is an equal reciprocal exchange that you give and you get in return. And that's where we're going to start when it comes to how I want you to think about this concept of letting go. We're going to talk about how to identify that moment when there is no longer that energy exchange, that there is something that has become a complete energy suck. And when you realize, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship or a job or some habit or a place that you live, when you realize that something has become an energy suck on you, that's when you know it's time to let go. That's when you know, like that tree, that you better kick that thing off your branches because it's hanging on to you or you're holding on to it. And if you keep doing that, what will happen? And you've had this happen in your life where you've held on to things for too long, where you refuse to let things go. And what did it do? It sucked you dry. It sucked you dry of your energy. It sucked you dry of your vitality. It made you feel depleted. Instead of those leaves or that project or that person withering away and falling to the ground so that you could regain your strength, so that you could step into a new season of your life, no, you gave it all to them. You held on for too long. Well, guess what? That's not happening anymore. Because what we're going to talk about when we come back from a short word from our sponsors, which I want you to listen to, because by the way, our sponsors, they're the reason why I can show up twice a week. There is a reciprocal exchange between us. They literally pay for this show, which is why I'm so enthusiastic about it, so we can put this out there around the world for free. So I want to give an energy exchange back to the amazing sponsors of the Mel Robbins podcast. Take a listen. We're going to be right back. Because we're going to now talk about, in detail, what do I mean by reciprocal energy exchange? And where are the major areas in your life where you tend to start to have this be a one-way thing, where you're given all the energy and you're the one that's depleted and dry? All right, I'll be right back. You hang on to my branches. We're not done yet. It's really green right now, which means these trees are holding on to it. Chlorophyll. That chlorophyll is coming through, but in literally a matter of days, the green is going to leave those leaves, yellow, orange, red, brown, purple. It's going to take over, and those leaves will have served their purpose, and they will all of a sudden wither away and fall to the ground. That was Mel Robbins, your friend who has a degree in botany. No, just kidding. I want to touch on one point from what I said on the trail before we get into this energy exchange and how you're going to use your intuition and the fact that you deserve to have an exchange, a reciprocal nature to what you give and what you receive back from it. I want to talk about one thing that I said, which is the leaves served their purpose. When the leaves are green, the leaves are bringing energy to the tree, and the tree is returning energy in the form of water. The reason why the leaves start to change is because the tree starts to pull back. The tree starts pulling back on the amount of water that it is sending to the leaves. The tree is starting to let go. the leaf no longer serves a purpose. And this is an important thing to say because so often we have trouble letting go of friendships, of habits, of jobs, of, for me, where I lived and raised our kids for 26 years. We recently sold our home, and by God, I held on to that for probably 2 years longer than we needed to because I had trouble letting go. But what I want you to focus on is that when something has a purpose in your life, that's an amazing thing. And it's also normal for something to serve a purpose during a specific period of time and to no longer serve a purpose in your life now or in the life you want to create. And so when you honor that a friendship served a purpose, and a really good example of this is, you know how whenever you have a new job or you move an apartment or you move to a city, that all of a sudden the patterns in your life change and your friendships change. And your friendships change because now you're doing different things. So you're bumping into different people. It doesn't mean that you're no longer friends with the people that you used to hang out with at work. But the friends that you had at work served a particular important purpose during that period of your life. There was an equal exchange back and forth. What you gave, you received back. It's why you ate lunch with the same people every day. You enjoyed them and they enjoyed you. But now that you live somewhere else, putting a ton of energy back into that relationship when you're not going to get the same back, it doesn't serve the same purpose. And that's why when you let go of friendships, you also need to let go of the judgment on yourself, like there's something wrong with me, and am I doing something wrong, and do I have any friends? Of course you have friends. The patterns of your life have changed. You're putting energy somewhere else because you're getting energy from somewhere else. This is the natural cycle of life. It's the natural cycle of relationships. And I find that when you really honor the things that you need to let go of, whether it's a job you no longer like, or a house you no longer want to live in, or a friendship you don't see very often, or maybe it's some habit. Maybe it's some habit that you used to have. So when you say something serves a purpose, you actually honor. You honor the energy it used to give you. You honor the fact that you put something into it. And you also honor the fact that not everything is going to be in your life forever. And that's what allows you to let go. You start to let go when you realize that holding on to things is holding you back. And in particular, holding on to the guilt and the judgment that you layer onto yourself that you should, but I feel guilty, but this, but that. That is definitely holding you back from creating a new life and from creating space for something new to happen. And see, that's one of the reasons why you have to learn how to let go. Because when you continue to pour your energy into things that no longer give you energy back, it's going to kill you. It's going to kill your happiness. It's going to kill your vitality. It destroys your motivation. It makes you feel depleted. It makes you feel like you're the last on your list. And so that's reason number one. And the second reason why you have to start to let go of what doesn't serve you is because as long as you are holding on to the old stuff, you have no time, no space, and no motivation to create anything new. Period. And you know this. So let's now jump into how. How do I use this energy exchange and my intuition to spot the things that are draining me dry and to let them go, push them off the branches, get them out of my life, thank them for their purpose and their service, but then get out of here because you need to make room for something new and better and energizing. Doesn't that sound good? Yeah, you better believe it sounds good. So let's do it. And one of the reasons why I want you to really focus on energy is because your energy doesn't lie. I mean, just for a second with me, just take a second. Whether you're out there walking the dog, or you're driving around in your car, or you're working from home, or you're busy doing a bunch of stuff, I want you to just stop for a second. And I want you to assess right now, what's your energy level? Think about a fuel gauge in a car, empty to full. Empty in a human being means you feel depleted, you feel burnt out, you feel checked out, you feel like your whole life is basically pouring energy into everything else. Full in a human being basically means that you're energized, you're excited. You feel like the things that you're pouring yourself into, your habits, your routine, the people you're surrounded with, the projects you're working on, it may be difficult, but it's bringing energy back into your life too. Your energy never lies. We are energetic human beings. And I know that sounds woo-woo. We can get into the neuroscience on that on a totally different episode, but let me prove it to you. Have you ever walked into, say, a coffee shop, and the person that is behind the counter is having the world's worst day? They are super grumpy. It doesn't matter how big your smile is. It doesn't matter how nice you are. They are like, that energy actually impacts you, just like your positive energy can impact somebody else. Energy is contagious. And most importantly, when you hang out with your friend Mel Robbins, I'm going to teach you to start to pay attention to it, and I'm going to teach you to trust it, because energy is also tied to intuition. And we're going to get into this tool of how do you assess, is something giving me positive energy? Is something giving me negative energy? Is this a relationship that is one way, or is this something that gives me something in return? That is the tool we're going to talk about today. And what if the very next morning you walk into the coffee shop and you're having a bad day? Like one of your pets is really sick and it just is really bumming you out and you're feeling really low. And the person behind the counter is just the nicest person on the planet. And they look you in the eyes and they give you a big smile and they are really cheery and they compliment you. And they maybe even ask you, hey, how you doing? You're like, I'm not doing so great. Oh, I'm really sorry. Coffee's on me. How do you feel? You feel better because they poured their positive energy into you and that lifted you up. Energy is contagious. It also always tells the truth. It's like a compass. In fact, a compass runs on magnetic energy. That's why a compass always points true north. It never lies. Your energy doesn't lie either. It's why you feel kind of off around certain people. It's why if somebody texts you and you don't like them, you're like, ugh. But if you like the person, you're like, oh, yeah, cool. Energy never lies. So let's talk about how we're going to use it, okay? So I'm going to break the topic of letting go into two different types of situations. And in each one, I'm going to explain how to use energy and paying attention to the energy inside you, both that you're giving, that you're feeling, and that you're receiving back, in order to know when it's time to let go. So situation number one is super easy. And this is typically when it has to do with things or projects or a job or somebody who's like really, really engaging in toxic behavior. Okay? This is the easy stuff. This is when you have a flood of negativity around something. And I'm going to give you a bunch of examples of this, okay? So we all have a pair of pants that we're holding on to from high school or before we were pregnant or whenever that we can't freaking fit into. When you stare at those things, you're reminded that you can't fit in them. When you try to wiggle them on, especially after a shower, you feel terrible about yourself. That is something that is an example. You need to let go of that. That job that you walk into where there is a pit in your stomach and you gripe about it to your friends and you spend all this energy pouring into why you hate it and resist it, you need to find another job. That friend that does nothing but gossip and roll their eyes and drag you down and literally is such a bad influence on you, you need to let them go. And what does that mean? Well, that depends on you. Donate the pants for sure. Start redirecting your energy from complaining about your job to directing energy to looking for a new one. I mean, just imagine. That's the other thing about this. Do you know how much energy and time and effort you waste focusing on resistance and complaining, if you were to just stop complaining for a day about something that gives you negative energy, like your job or your parents or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your roommates, what if you stopped complaining? Because that's negative energy pouring out, and you directed that same effort towards something positive, like fixing it or letting it go and creating something new that makes you feel good. Like, I relate to that because I think I've spent a lot of my life pouring negative energy at things that I didn't really like, instead of realizing I needed to complete this. I needed to let this go. The roommate served a purpose 2 years ago. Not a fit right now, and that's okay. Time to kick the leaves off the branches. You know what I'm saying? Time to save myself instead of pouring everything into either another person or my energy into being upset and frustrated and disappointed. So when you have things that are for sure 100% zapping your energy, or you find yourself complaining, griping, resisting, let go. And you can do that in 2 ways. Obviously, donate, throw out, delete is one. The other one is take all that negative resistance that you feel in you that churns and pour it into something positive. If you can't quit your job, for example, because you need to pay the bills, no problem. Instead of complaining, instead of feeling resistance, spend 30 minutes every morning before you go to work looking for a new one. Or spend 30 minutes every morning pouring positive energy into a hobby or a project or a side hustle that brings you positive energy. And when you start to do that, you start to lift yourself up because you are now getting this reciprocal exchange by pouring energy and attention into something new and something positive. And that's going to lift you up. And by the way, that will also change your experience of that current job that you hate. I know this because I've done it. I remember being right out of, let's see, how old was I? I was 30 years old. I was pregnant with our daughter, who's now 23. And we had moved to Boston from New York City, where I had been a public defender. And I loved that job working for legal aid. And so we moved to Boston. I do not have a license to practice in Massachusetts, so I could not work for the public defender's office. I have to take the bar, but I've got bills to pay. So I get a job in this huge law firm. And working in a law firm is the exact opposite of being a public defender. When I worked in New York City for legal aid, I was in court 5 days a week from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That was my job. I was on my feet. I was, negotiating plea deals. I was talking to witnesses and police officers and judges and going to clients, going to Rikers, all of it. When you get a job in a large law firm, you literally go into a high rise and sit in an office and write all day. It was the exact opposite of what I am wired to do. I knew the moment I got that job that I was going to hate it. And for a year, I would get on the commuter rail and I would commute in for 45 minutes, and then I would get off the commuter rail and I would clomp over to the building, and then I would get in the elevator, and then I would take the elevator up to the 23rd floor, and then I'd clomp. I'd go into my office and shut the door. And from the moment I woke up every morning, I felt depleted. The closer I got to that office as that train clunk, 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 clunk down the tracks towards Boston, the more resistance I felt. I got nothing in return from that job. Yes, I got a paycheck and I needed it, so it served a purpose, but I was getting nothing of value back. Because when I looked at the partners in the law firm, I knew damn well that's not the life I wanted. I knew that this was not a fit for me. But I'll tell you, I made the mistake that everybody makes. Instead of recognizing that that's how I felt, instead of channeling all of that angst and resistance and into looking for something else, I sat there miserable and I felt depleted and I felt awful. And I'm going to confess this to you. I didn't even take the advice then. You know what happened to me? I got pregnant and I had a baby and I went on maternity leave. And when I was on maternity leave, that's when, with distance from it, I was like, okay, there is no way I'm going back there. No way. Now that I have escaped, there is no way I'm going back. And we've all had exes like that, right? Where you're like in it for so long, you finally let it go and break off. And they're like, what the hell was I thinking now that I'm on the other side and I'm away from that like energy suck? I don't want to go back to the like energy sucker vampire thing. What the hell? But when you're in it, that negativity vortex can keep you spinning and stuck. You convince yourself, but I need the money, but I can't do this, but and then you're so depleted from your complaining and the outpouring of energy and the wrong thing that you're just stuck. That was me. So I get pregnant. I go on maternity leave. Holy cow, I am free from the vortex of negativity. I've been let go, but now I got to go back. And so my husband, Chris, says to me, look, I know you don't want to go back, but here's the problem, Mel. We have a mortgage and we have a baby. And you will go crazy being home. And so here's the thing. You need to find a job. Your maternity leave ends in exactly 3 months. So that means you have 12 weeks to find a job. And you have to make $60,000 a year. That's it. And you know what's interesting? If you give a human being a problem to solve, we get pretty creative. And I'll tell you what, the night before my maternity leave, I not only landed a job, it wasn't for 60 grand, it was for 55, but that was enough. And I walked in the next day and I let go. I what do you say? I guess I quit, but you know, they didn't let me go. I quit. But so what I'm trying to say is do not make the mistake that 30-year-old Mel Robbins made. Do not do that to yourself. Do not waste a year of your life spinning in that negativity energy vortex. Your body knows. Your spirit knows. Get rid of those pants. Push that project to the side that you don't feel inspired to work on anymore. Let it go because it is sucking your vitality dry. And I want to just remind you that we're talking about reciprocal energy exchange. That's why these situations of the pants that don't fit and the friend that's engaging in toxic behavior or the job that sucks your soul dry, there is nothing that you're getting in return. Nothing. In fact, what you're getting in return is more negativity. Those jeans in your closet make you feel bad about yourself. It's bringing you negative energy. That job that you're complaining about, that you go to day to day, convincing yourself you can't leave, you can't find some la-da-da-da-da-da-da, it's bringing negative energy into your life. And so these situations are super easy to spot because there's no reciprocal value to the relationship or the pants or the project, period. Now what I want to talk about is the more complicated situations. Those situations where it's not clear, where you feel guilty, where maybe you're taking care of an aging parent or a child that's struggling with mental health stuff, and it is depleting as hell. Or maybe you are really struggling with friendship or in relationships because you have old patterns of behavior that you don't realize are interfering with this free-flowing reciprocal give and take that really brings amazing things into your life. So when we come back, that's what we're going to talk about. Because this notion that I'm teaching you of letting go and energy, it's not complicated at all. But life doesn't work that way. Life can get really complicated. And so when we come back, that's what we're going to dig into next. Hey, welcome back. I want to recap everything that we've covered because, you know, here on the Mel Robbins podcast, there is no one left behind. So let's talk about what we've already covered, okay? Number one, we've talked about the fact that in order to be a happier person and create the life that you deserve, you have to learn how to let go of the things that no longer serve you. Number two, you have learned that letting go is a natural and important part of your life cycle. Whether you need to let go of friendships or a job or a place that you live or habits or the friend group that you hang out with, letting go allows you to create room for new growth, new seasons, new chapters, new adventures. And it's only through that growth and those new things that you're allowing yourself to experience that you will come into your full potential and you will unlock the magic in your life. So letting go is not a bad thing. It's a really good thing. It's a great skill. In fact, I notice in the DMs, a lot of you go, but aren't I a quitter if I quit? No, winners quit all the time. I actually think it's a losing thing to do, to hold on to things that no longer serve you. One aspect of being a winner is knowing where to put your focus and knowing when something should end. And so absolutely, winners quit all the time, because when you're quitting or saying no to something right now, that's actually a yes to something else. And when you frame letting go to be not a no, not a breakup, not something negative, but letting go is letting something else open up in your life. Letting go is a beginning. Letting go is about possibility. Letting go is about the magic that's ahead. It's about the future. And so letting go is so important. And I want you to embrace it. The third thing that we talked about is that you have natural intelligence inside of you. And that may sound all woo-woo. This is science. And we're going to unpack this all the time, because I'm going to keep coming back to the fact that you have instincts, you have hard wiring, your gut is trying to tell you something. And one of the fastest ways to read that natural intelligence is to pay attention to your energy. You have felt what I'm talking about. You know when things are off. You know when you feel depleted. You know when you naturally click with somebody. That is data that matters, because it's data that helps you make the changes, the small changes that improve your life. The fourth thing that you've clearly learned is that the best things in life are reciprocal. Even volunteering. Volunteering is a reciprocal act. You want to know why? When you volunteer, and you volunteer your time, you volunteer your energy, you donate money, you always receive something in return, don't you? You feel this sense of meaning. You feel connected to something larger and more important than your day-to-day struggles. That is a reciprocal energy exchange. You donate money, you volunteer your time and effort and resources, you get something invaluable back. That's reciprocal. That's why it adds meaning. The best friendships, reciprocal. You pour in, they pour back. Same thing with your romantic relationships. And all you need to do is to think about that one person you chased, right? That you're constantly going after. Should I text now? Are there all the energy going at them? And yeah, maybe you got an orgasm back, but then mostly you got negativity, because you're constantly insecure, constantly worried, no idea where you stood, always stressed out about it, thinking about it, distracted by it. That is not a reciprocal relationship. That is an obsession that's unhealthy for you. So there are things in life that are really hard, that take a lot of energy. Things that I hate doing, things like exercise. I hate exercising. I hate getting out of bed. But once I push through that resistance, right? You learned all about this in the episode called Motivation is Garbage. Once you get the activation energy and you do the thing, what happens after you exercise? You get a reciprocal return of positive energy. You feel great about yourself. The same thing's true about my husband, who doesn't drink right now. It takes a lot of effort. At least it did in the beginning. And it was really hard because he had been drinking for a long time. But even though it's hard, it's so worth it. Why? Because there is this reciprocal return. You start to feel so good about yourself. You sleep better at night. You have clarity, you have pride. You're aligned with your values. And that values word is really important, because when it becomes even more nuanced, your values is how you're going to create a return of energy in really hard situations. So I can give you two examples. Any one of you who is caring for an aging parent knows how difficult that is. Any one of you that has a child or a partner who is struggling with mental health issues knows how difficult that is. You also know that you are pouring your energy into caring for this person. And it can be very depleting, because the person that is sick or the person that's struggling doesn't often give back what you're pouring in. It also may be physically demanding because you're working all the time. Plus, you're doing this at night. And so you are tired. It's a fact. So, how in those situations do you create this exchange of energy? The secret is values. Tap into your values in order to create positive energy back and to help you rise above the day-to-day stresses that are temporary. Because the truth is, if you tap into your values, it makes you feel like an amazing human being, knowing that you are there for your mom. It makes you feel like a good person, knowing that you are a compassionate caregiver that is helping your child or your partner through a really difficult chapter. When you start to feel depleted, remind yourself, lift your gaze, raise your gaze, and look out to the future and feel proud of yourself for acting in alignment with the kind of person you know yourself to be, even though it's hard. That's how you create a positive energy return for yourself in those situations where somebody either doesn't have it to give back or the situation itself is really physically demanding. I'll give you another example. I have a friend that is going through a hard time and has been for a long time. And I continue to pour into this friendship, even though I don't get a lot back. Why? The reason why is I get a lot back knowing that if I were in this situation, I would want a friend of mine to stay around and pour into me. And that is what drives me. That creates that energy exchange. And so you have within you the ability to do things that feel hard, like exercising or stopping drinking or staying sober or changing your habits or making cold calls. You can do those things that feel difficult. And trust me, you're going to feel proud of yourself, which is why they return on the investment of effort. And you can do things that are draining. And I promise you, they will come back to you with energy because it makes you feel good about yourself. And I bet you can think of 4 or 5 things that you're doing right now that are hard that you're not even giving yourself credit for. You should be proud of yourself because you're a good person. You keep showing up. And that is something you need to celebrate. That's something that you need to feel energized about. And in those times when it gets really hard, remind yourself, this too shall pass. That what goes up also comes down. Just like when you're hiking a trail on a mountain. That this is a season of your life. And holding on to what doesn't serve you is going to drain you. It's going to kill off your happiness. But finding ways to bring energy back in those situations that are aligned with your values and what you want, that's a power move. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.